When most people hear the phrase English in Africa, a familiar picture forms in their minds almost instantly. They imagine polished British accents inherited from colonial classrooms, or American tones picked up from movies, music, and pop culture. That image feels complete, comfortable, unquestioned. But something quiet, unexpected, and deeply transformative is unfolding across the African continent right now, and almost no one saw it coming. Across cities, campuses, call centers, online meetings, YouTube videos, and TikTok lives, a new sound is rising. A softer sound, a clearer sound, a warmer sound. Millions of Africans, especially young people, are beginning to speak English in a way that doesn't come from London or New York. It comes from Manila, it comes from Cebu, it comes from the Philippines. At first, this idea feels almost impossible to believe. How could a country thousands of miles away, separated by oceans, cultures, and histories, influence how Africans speak English today? How could a Southeast Asian nation quietly reshape speech patterns across Lagos, Nairobi, Accra, Kigali, Dar es Salaam, and Johannesburg? Yet if you listen closely, the evidence is everywhere. From the rhythm of sentences, to the careful pronunciation of words, to the polite, emotionally open tone. Africa is experiencing a subtle but powerful shift. A shift that is redefining what good English means in the modern world. And this story is not about accents alone. It's about opportunity, it's about dignity. It's about two regions of the global South discovering each other and reshaping the future together. For decades, English in Africa carried a heavy burden. Speaking the language well was never just about communication. It was about status education, intelligence, respect. In many African societies, the way you spoke English could open doors or quietly close them forever. A strong accent often invited mockery. A local tone, no matter how grammatically correct, was sometimes treated as evidence of inferiority. So young Africans grew up with a question that had no clear answer. Which English is the right English? British English, inherited from colonial systems? American English popularized by films and music? Local African English, rich in identity but often dismissed internationally. For decades, this confusion lingered. People tried to imitate one accent today, another tomorrow. Some forced their voices into unfamiliar shapes. Others gave up entirely, believing they could never sound global enough. Then, slowly, almost invisibly, something changed. The change didn't come from classrooms or governments. It didn't come from textbooks or grammar guides. It came from the internet. As online work exploded across the world, millions of young Africans stepped into the digital economy. Freelancing platforms, remote jobs, virtual classrooms, customer service roles, content creation. Suddenly, borders mattered less than communication. And in these digital spaces, Africans began to notice something striking. Again and again, they encountered Filipino professionals. Filipino teachers teaching English online. Filipino freelancers leading group meetings. Filipino customer service agents handling international clients. Filipino YouTubers explaining complex ideas with calm clarity. And almost everyone noticed the same thing. They were easy to understand. Not flashy, not exaggerated. Not aggressive, just clear, confident, and kind. Their English didn't sound British. It didn't sound American, yet it sounded professional. It sounded global. It sounded human. Filipinos spoke with a rhythm that felt welcoming. Their pronunciation was careful but natural. Their tone carried warmth, respect, and emotional openness. They didn't rush, they didn't intimidate. They communicated. For African freelancers working with international clients, this was a revelation. Many had struggled before, not because their grammar was poor, but because communication felt tense. Accents clashed, misunderstandings happened, confidence dropped. But when they listened to Filipinos speak, something clicked. This, many thought quietly, is what clients actually want. Not perfection. Not imitation, but understanding. So Africans began to pay attention. They watched Filipino vloggers more closely. They listened carefully during virtual meetings. They replayed tutorials, interviews, and lessons. Without planning to, they began to imitate. Not consciously at first, but naturally. They softened their pronunciation. They slowed their pace. They adjusted their intonation. They spoke with more warmth, more patience, more clarity. Across Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Rwanda, and beyond, YouTube channels began to appear with titles that said it all, without saying it directly. How to speak clear, neutral English. Improve your English accent for global jobs. Speak English confidently and clearly. And if you listened closely, the influence was unmistakable. Teachers noticed it too. In classrooms and online lessons, some African educators began encouraging students to focus less on sounding British or American and more on sounding understandable, polite, professional. In call centers across Africa, especially in Kenya and Ghana, training programs quietly evolved. Modules on neutral communication became standard. Clients from Europe and North America didn't want heavy accents. They wanted clarity. They wanted friendliness. They wanted ease, and the Filipino model delivered exactly that. Some African companies even went further, inviting Filipino consultants to train staff on communication skills, customer service tone, and professional English delivery. Language schools followed. In places like Ghana, new programs began advertising neutral English communication, borrowing directly from the language of the Philippine BPO industry. This wasn't coincidence, it was adaptation. But why was the Filipino style so powerful? The answer lies deep in history. For more than a century, English in the Philippines didn't replace local languages, it blended with them. It lived alongside emotion, culture, humor, and humility. Filipinos learned English not as a symbol of superiority, but as a tool for connection. They learned to use intonation to soften meaning. They used warmth to build trust. They expressed emotion openly, even in professional settings. This created a unique rhythm, neither rigid nor careless. A balance. Africans recognized themselves in this rhythm. Africa, too, is emotionally expressive. Story-driven, relationship-focused. Tone matters, respect matters. Feeling matters. The Filipino way allowed Africans to sound international without sounding unnatural. Over the last decade, thousands of Filipinos taught English online to students across the globe, including many in Africa. Some African learners noticed something unexpected happening. They weren't just learning vocabulary, they were learning confidence. In Nigeria, online English coaching channels began adopting Filipino-style phonics. In Kenya, young YouTubers openly credited Filipino vloggers for helping them speak without fear. One Kenyan creator said it best, "When I watched Filipinos, I realized English doesn't have to sound British to be beautiful." That realization spread quietly but deeply. For the first time, many Africans felt free. Free from the pressure to imitate the West. Free from the fear of being mocked. Free to focus on meaning, not mimicry. And beneath all of this was something even deeper. The Filipino way of speaking English represents humility, adaptability, global intelligence without arrogance. Africans saw how Filipinos used English to build massive global industries, call centers, nursing, online education, remote work. They saw people from the global South winning, leading, and thriving on a global stage. And they thought, if they can do it this way, so can we. This wasn't just language learning anymore. It was strategy. It was empowerment. Africans began winning more international contracts, building stronger client relationships, gaining respect, not by pretending to be someone else, but by communicating effectively. The influence reached media and entertainment too. African TikTok creators began using Filipino-style expressions unconsciously. Phrases like, "for me, I think," or "it's like, you know," slipped into everyday speech. Comedians joked about it, skits emerged. Laughter followed, but beneath the humor was admiration. The Filipino accent was no longer strange. It became a symbol of global professionalism, of clarity, of opportunity. Even government programs took notice. Tourism training sessions began emphasizing friendly, neutral English. Customer service workshops featured Filipino voices as models of world-class communication. In some English assessments, listening exercises now featured Filipino speakers instead of traditional British or American ones. Think about that. An accent once overlooked is now shaping standards. Why? Because people want to be understood. For decades, Africans were told their accents were a problem, even when their ideas were brilliant. The Filipino model offered a middle ground. You don't have to erase yourself. You don't have to copy the West. You just have to communicate with clarity, confidence, and kindness. And perhaps the most powerful influence of all is emotional tone. Filipino English often sounds polite, cheerful, and uplifting. It naturally includes respect. Please, thank you, excuse me. These values align perfectly with African cultures. As Africans adopt this style, they're not just changing how they speak, they're changing how they connect. What began as imitation has become integration. Young Africans today mix Filipino-style English effortlessly into their natural speech. To them, this isn't foreign, it's normal. It's the English they grew up hearing online. To this generation, Filipino English isn't an alternative. It's global English. Experts now suggest that African English may become more neutral, melodic, and emotionally expressive in the coming decade, opening doors for professionals, educators, and creators worldwide. But the biggest message of all lies beneath the sound. This movement proves something powerful. English no longer belongs to the West. It belongs to those who use it with purpose, with clarity, with humanity. The Global South is shaping the future of language, quietly, confidently, together. So the next time you hear a young African speaking English with a soft, clear, respectful tone, remember, this isn't coincidence. It's history unfolding. The Filipino way crossed oceans. It touched hearts. It changed voices. And now Africa is making it its own. Not by copying, but by redefining. And in doing so, Filipinos and Africans together are sending a message the world can no longer ignore. English belongs to the world.